On a hill forever shrouded in mist, where sunlight never reaches, stands a hotel called Hắc Vân. And within it, a room that must never be opened, room 13. They say that when night falls, footsteps echo through its empty halls. Slow, steady, as if calling from another world. No one knows who built the hotel, or why in every photograph taken there, a fifth figure always appears. Someone who never existed. And when you hear the mother's lullaby, it means you've crossed the line between the living and the dead, into the place where forgotten souls still wait to be named. Chapter 1. The first night at Hắc Vân Hotel. The night train stopped at a small station hidden deep in the mountain mist. Lan stepped down, her suitcase dragging behind her, shoes sinking slightly into the damp gravel. The air carried a faint smell of pine resin mixed with something strange, something like burnt incense. She raised her eyes and saw the dim outline of a large building at the end of the road, Hắc Vân Hotel. Its roof tiles were covered in moss, the windows were dark, as if no one had lived there for a long time. Yet, the light from a single lamp flickered faintly at the reception desk, like a dying flame refusing to go out. Lan was a photographer, traveling alone to collect material for a series called Forgotten Places. She had heard of this hotel from an old local who warned her. That place hasn't had guests for decades. Every full moon, footsteps echo from the corridor, even though no one is there. Lan only smiled. Maybe that's what I want to capture. She walked up the path. Each step on the stone stairs echoed louder than it should have, like someone else was following her. When she turned, the road behind was empty, only mist swirling in pale waves. The front door creaked open with a long sigh. Inside, the smell of old wood and damp fabric hit her nose. The lobby was wide but empty, with only a desk, a bell, and a dusty chandelier hanging above. Behind the desk sat an old man, thin, pale, eyes dim like cloudy glass. He looked up slowly. You shouldn't have come here alone, miss. Lan smiled politely. I just need a place to stay for one night. The old man hesitated, then took a key from the wall. It was heavy, cold, and covered with rust. On it was carved a faint number, 13. There's only one room left, he said softly. But if you hear footsteps tonight, don't open the door. Lan went upstairs. The corridor stretched long and narrow, lit only by the flickering light from a few wall lamps. She passed room 9, room 10, room 11, then stopped. Room 12 had no number. And next to it, room 13 stood with the door slightly open, as if waiting for her. When she entered, a cold wind brushed her neck. The room was clean, too clean, as though someone had just finished arranging it. On the table sat a vase of white lilies. Their scent was strong, almost suffocating. Lan set up her camera, adjusting the tripod near the window. Outside, fog rolled endlessly, covering the hills like an ocean. She heard faintly, from somewhere below, a rhythm of footsteps, slow, steady, almost human. Probably just the old man walking around, she whispered. But the sound didn't stop. It grew clearer, closer, moving along the hallway, until it stopped right outside her door. Lan held her breath. Silence. Then, cop, two dull knocks. Her heart pounded. She waited. No more sound. After a long moment, she forced herself to open the door. The hallway was empty. But on the floor, she saw a single wet footprint, small and faint, leading toward the stairs. She followed it halfway before it vanished, as if the air itself had swallowed it. From below came the whisper of the wind, or maybe a voice. Very soft. Don't wake us. Lan froze. The vase of lilies inside her room tipped over with a dull thud. Water spilled across the floor, forming a shape like another footprint beside the first. She stepped back slowly, locked the door, and whispered to herself. It's just the wind. But all night long, as fog pressed against the windows, she kept hearing those same footsteps. circling the hallway, sometimes stopping in front of her room, sometimes passing by, sometimes right behind her. Chapter 2. The Sound in the Dark. The clock in Lan's room struck midnight. The sound was faint but sharp, echoing strangely in the heavy air. Outside the window, the mist thickened, rolling like slow-moving smoke. Lan couldn't sleep. Her camera was set on the tripod, lens pointing toward the door. She wanted to capture the source of those footsteps she'd heard earlier. The old man's warning replayed in her mind. Greater than, if you hear footsteps, don't open the door. She smiled faintly to herself. Maybe it's time to find out who's really there. She turned off the lights. The room sank into darkness, lit only by the faint blue glow from the camera's indicator. The silence was suffocating, so quiet she could hear her own pulse. Then it came again. The sound. Cop, cop. Slow, deliberate, echoing from the corridor. It was the same rhythm as before, but this time, it didn't stop at her door. It moved past, then back again, like someone pacing. Lan's breath grew shallow. She reached for the camera and switched it to recording mode. Through the lens, the door frame was barely visible. Fog drifted in the hallway outside, dim light flickering. And then, a shadow passed by the crack beneath the door. Lan froze. She adjusted the focus, eyes locked on the frame. The shadow returned, slower this time, stretching across the light from the corridor. Then it stopped. Right outside. Cop. A single knock. Lan's throat went dry. She whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Only the sound of someone breathing, faint but steady, on the other side of the wood. Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle. The old man's voice echoed again in her memory, "Don't open it." But curiosity pulled stronger than fear. The lock clicked. The door creaked open a narrow line. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Lan stepped out, holding the camera low, the recording light glowing red. Fog swirled around her ankles. The air smelled faintly of incense, mixed with old dust. Down the corridor, a door stood ajar, room 12, the one without a number. A faint light leaked from inside, flickering like candle flame. Lan hesitated, then walked closer. Her footsteps echoed softly. Each step she took, she heard another one follow, perfectly in sync. But when she stopped, the other one didn't. It took 2 more steps forward. She turned sharply, heart pounding. The corridor behind her was empty, but the sound still rang in her ears, "Cop, cop," repeating from somewhere that wasn't there. Lan backed toward room 12. The door opened wider, slowly, without a touch. Inside, the faint light flickered, revealing an old wooden floor and a single chair facing the window. On the chair sat a figure. Motionless, hair long, wearing white. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. Lan whispered, "Hello." The head turned slightly. Just enough for her to see that the face was gone. Where eyes and mouth should have been was only a blur of gray. Shifting like smoke. Lan stumbled back, nearly dropping the camera. The door slammed shut with a bang. Her light flickered out. In the darkness, she heard it again, those footsteps. Now behind her, circling slowly, like something was searching. She ran toward her room, heart thundering, and slammed the door shut. Breathing hard, she replayed the footage on her camera. The screen flickered. The last frame showed the corridor, and a hand, pale and thin, reaching out from the door of room 12. Then the file cut off by itself. Lan sat against the wall, trembling. The air in her room had turned cold enough for her breath to show. Outside, the footsteps began again, calm and patient, like someone walking in circles, waiting for her to fall asleep. When dawn finally came, she didn't remember closing her eyes. Only the sound fading slowly. And a whisper that seemed to come from inside her dreams. Greater than, the 13th door, must never open. Chapter 3. The Hotel Keeper. Morning crept slowly into Hắc Vân Hotel. The fog outside hadn't lifted. It pressed thickly against the windows like layers of gray silk. Lan sat at the small wooden table, her hands trembling slightly as she replayed the footage from last night. The recording ended abruptly. The last frame froze on that pale hand reaching from room 12. Then the screen went black. She rubbed her eyes. It must have been a trick of light, or my mind playing with me. But she couldn't explain the scratches on her door, thin, parallel lines that hadn't been there before. Dash dash dash. A soft knock echoed. Lan opened the door. The old hotel keeper stood outside, his back slightly bent, a kettle of tea in his hand. Greater than, "You were awake all night, weren't you?" he asked. "These walls don't let people rest easily." Lan forced a smile. Greater than, "I heard noises from the hall." The old man's eyes clouded for a moment. Then he sighed. Greater than, "I told you not to open the door." Greater than, "Was there someone here before me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he set the teapot down and poured a cup. Steam curled up like mist from the mountains. Greater than, "This place was full once," he said slowly. "Travelers, families, newlyweds, until that winter night 30 years ago." Dash dash dash. Lan leaned forward. What happened? He stared at his cup, voice dropping to a whisper. Greater than, "A woman named Lynn came with her baby. They stayed in room 13. The child cried all night, never stopped. The next morning, both were gone." Lan felt a chill crawl up her arms. Greater than, "Gone? You mean, left?" Greater than, "No." The old man shook his head. The door was locked from the inside. No one answered. When we broke it open, the room was empty. Just the cradle, rocking on its own. Dash dash dash. Lan looked toward the hallway. The faint sound of wood creaking above them. Greater than, and after that? Greater than, guests started leaving. Every full moon, footsteps echoed through the corridor. Sometimes, the sound of a lullaby. He looked at her sharply. Greater than, "You heard it too, didn't you?" Lan hesitated. "I'm not sure." Greater than, "It's her," he said softly, "the mother looking for her child." Dash dash dash. Silence filled the room. Outside, the fog thinned slightly, letting a faint ray of sunlight in. But it only made the shadows sharper. The old man stood. Greater than, "If you want to stay, keep your door locked after midnight. And whatever happens, never enter room 13. He paused at the door. Greater than, "People think ghosts are evil. But sometimes, they're just waiting for someone to listen." Then he left, leaving the faint scent of old incense in the air. Dash dash dash. Lan sat there for a long time. Her eyes drifted to the corridor, where the numbers on the doors glimmered faintly in the light. All normal, except for one. Room 13's number plate was missing. She lifted her camera again, pointing the lens down the hallway. Through the viewfinder, every door reflected perfectly. Except room 13. That one appeared open, with the faint outline of a cradle moving back and forth in the dark. Chapter 4. The Cradle in the Dark. That night, the fog returned thicker than ever. The sky was swallowed by gray clouds, and the pine trees outside rustled like whispers of unseen things. Lan sat at her desk, the old man's words echoing in her head. Greater than, "Never enter room 13. But the more she tried to forget it, the stronger her curiosity grew. Her camera rested on the table. The battery light blinked faintly, casting a weak red glow across the room. Every few minutes, she heard a dull creak from the ceiling, like someone walking slowly above her. Dash dash dash. Lan stood, walked to the door, and pressed her ear against it. Silence. Then, a faint sound, distant yet distinct. Greater than, "Oh oh, Geo Dua, gun truck." It was the same lullaby. Soft, sorrowful, drifting through the corridor. Lan's heart pounded. She grabbed her flashlight and camera, then stepped into the hallway. The air was icy, heavy with the scent of lilies. The light flickered weakly as she walked. Every door she passed seemed to exhale a cold breath. When she reached the end of the corridor, she saw it. Room 13. The door was slightly open, a dim light seeping out. Her hand trembled as she pushed it open. The room was dark except for the glow of a single candle by the window. Dust floated in the air like gray snow. And there, in the middle of the room, stood a cradle. Wooden, old, rocking gently back and forth on its own. The lullaby continued, but now it sounded closer, almost right beside her ear. Lan stepped forward, flashlight shaking. The light fell on the cradle's blanket, pale white, embroidered with a faint red thread along the edge. She leaned closer. Under the blanket was nothing. No baby. Just a hollow space, cold and empty. But when she straightened up, she noticed something carved into the wood of the cradle. A name, barely visible under the candlelight. Greater than Lin. Lan's breath caught. That was the name the old man had mentioned. The mother who vanished. A sudden gust of wind blew the candle out. Darkness swallowed the room. In the blackness, the cradle began to move faster, creaking violently. The lullaby warped, the melody twisting into distorted whispers. Lan stumbled back toward the door, fumbling for the handle, but it was gone. Her fingers met only the cold, smooth surface of the wall. The sound grew louder. Now it was two voices, a woman's low hum and the faint cry of a child. Lan pressed her back to the wall, whispering, "Stop, please stop." The cradle stopped abruptly. Silence. Then, a voice, right behind her. Greater than, "You shouldn't have come." She turned sharply, but there was no one. Only the faint shimmer of light returning to the candle flame, relit by no hand. The cradle was still now, perfectly still. And inside it lay a tiny, pale footprint, pressed into the white blanket. Lan backed away, breath shaking, eyes fixed on that impossible print. Her flashlight flickered once more, and just before it went out, she thought she saw a woman standing by the window, long hair flowing, singing softly to a cradle that no longer rocked. Chapter 5. The figures behind the glass. The following morning came without sunlight. The fog clung to the window like frost, and every breath Lan exhaled turned into mist. She hadn't slept. The candle she'd lit the night before had burned down to wax tears on the table. She looked at the cradle again, empty, silent, unmoving. Everything seemed normal, as if the previous night had been nothing but a dream. Yet the faint footprint on the white blanket remained. Lan picked up her camera and checked the memory card. The last video ended abruptly again. But when she paused the footage, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. A shadow behind her, standing near the window, just before the candle went out. She enlarged the image. The shape was faint but clear enough. A woman holding what looked like a baby, staring directly at the lens. Lan's stomach tightened. She turned toward the same window and froze. Outside the fogged glass, a handprint appeared. Small, delicate, pressed against the pane from the other side. Lan stepped closer. Her own reflection blurred as she reached toward it. When her fingertip touched the cold glass, the print moved, sliding slowly across the window like someone tracing from the inside. She gasped and stumbled back. The handprint vanished, replaced by a faint outline, a face, pale and indistinct, watching her through the mist. The mouth moved slightly, though no sound came. Lan whispered, "Who are you?" The lips behind the glass formed a single word. She could read it clearly. Greater than, Lan. Her own name. She staggered back, knocking over her chair. The name echoed in her head like a whisper from the past. How could it know her name? At that moment, the doorknob rattled. 3 slow knocks followed. Cop, cop, cop. Lan's pulse raced. Greater than, who is it? Silence. Then, faintly, the voice of the old hotel keeper through the door. Greater than, are you all right, miss? Lan hurried to open it. The old man stood there, face pale, eyes downcast. He glanced at the cradle, then the fogged window, and sighed. Greater than, you saw her, didn't you? Dash dash dash. Lan swallowed. Who is she? Greater than, Lin, he said softly. The woman from room 13. She still lingers here. She calls to whoever carries her name. Lan blinked in confusion. Greater than, what do you mean? Greater than, before the tragedy. She told me she was naming her baby after herself. If something happens to me, she said, then at least someone will call our name again. His eyes lifted, meeting Lan's. Greater than, and your name, is Lan. Almost the same. The room seemed to shrink around her. A chill crept up her spine, the kind that made her feel she was being watched by someone who remembered her from another lifetime. Dash dash dash. The old man turned toward the hallway. Greater than, when the living share a name with the dead. Doors sometimes open. Greater than, doors? Greater than, not the kind you can close again. He left quietly, footsteps fading down the corridor. Lan stood frozen for a long moment before glancing once more at the window. Her reflection stared back, pale and trembling. But behind her reflection, another figure stood. The same woman, the same empty eyes. Her lips mouthing the same word over and over. Greater than, Lan, Lan. The glass cracked with a sharp sound. And all at once, the fog outside seemed to breathe. Chapter 6. The Voice in the Mirror. That night, rain began to fall softly over the mountain. The wind howled through the pine trees, brushing against the walls of Hắc Vân Hotel like restless hands. Lan sat alone in her room, staring at the mirror opposite her bed. The glass was old, stained with age, but faint light from her desk lamp reflected clearly on its surface. She could see herself, pale, tired, but still trying to convince her mind that everything had a reason. Yet deep inside, she knew the mirror had changed. It had begun to feel alive. Dash dash dash. Earlier that evening, when she passed by, the mirror had caught her reflection, but only for a moment. Then the image moved on its own, even after she'd already stepped away. It had turned its head toward her. She told herself it was imagination. Now, at midnight, she could no longer pretend. Lan picked up her camera and aimed it at the mirror. She pressed record, her hand trembling slightly. At first, the reflection behaved normally. Her own face stared back, anxious and uncertain. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and the reflection smiled. Lan didn't. Dash dash dash. Her breath caught. She lowered the camera, staring directly at her reflection. The figure inside the mirror leaned slightly forward, head tilted, lips moving soundlessly. Lan whispered, "What do you want?" The voice came, not through her ears, but through her mind. Soft, familiar, like a whisper of her own thoughts. Greater than, you called me, and now I can see you. Lan froze. Greater than, who are you? Greater than, I am what's left of her, and what will be left of you. The reflection's face flickered between two shapes, hers and another woman's, shifting back and forth like the surface of disturbed water. Dash dash dash. Lan stepped closer. The mirror's surface rippled, faint waves spreading outward. Inside, the other face grew clearer, Lin. The same woman from the cradle. From the fog. Her eyes were deep and dark, filled with a sorrow that seemed endless. Greater than, you carry my name, the voice said. So you carry my memory. That's why the door opened for you. Lan shook her head. I don't understand. Greater than, you will. When the time comes, you will see what I saw, and hear what I heard. Dash dash dash. The mirror shuddered violently. Cracks appeared across the glass like thin veins of light. From within, a faint lullaby drifted out, muffled, but unmistakable. Lan covered her ears, but the melody grew louder, filling the entire room. The mirror's light dimmed, turning the reflection darker and darker, until her own image was completely gone. Only Lin's face remained. Greater than, help me find him, she whispered. He was never buried. The child is still waiting. The lights went out. Lan felt a cold breeze pass through her hair, though the window was closed. The voice echoed softly, as if from the other side of the glass. Greater than, the 13th room will not stay shut forever. Dash dash dash. When the power returned, the mirror was whole again. No cracks, no movement, just her pale reflection staring back. But as Lan turned away, the reflection didn't move with her. It stayed still, watching, and in its eyes glimmered a faint, distant light, like a candle still burning somewhere inside the dark. Chapter 7. The Secret in the Diary. The rain stopped before dawn, leaving a heavy dampness in the air. Lan opened the window, cold fog seeped in, brushing across her face like soft fingers. Somewhere deep in the forest, a bird called once, then fell silent. She turned back toward her desk. On the table lay a small, leather-bound notebook, one she was sure hadn't been there before. Its cover was cracked with age, the edges stained dark by time. The name, Lin, was faintly embossed on the front. Lan hesitated, fingers hovering above it. Her instincts told her not to open it. But curiosity had already rooted itself in her chest. She opened the first page. The handwriting was delicate, slanted slightly to the right. Most of the ink had faded, but the words still carried emotion, loneliness, grief, fear. Greater than, day 1 we've arrived. The child won't stop crying. He doesn't like this place. I don't either. Greater than, day 3 the hotel keeper told me there's a rule. No one must enter room 13 at night. But he didn't tell me why. Greater than, day 7 I heard footsteps again. The baby woke up, crying toward the door. I saw someone standing in the mirror. It was me. Lan's breath quickened. Each line she read felt like peeling away a layer of dust covering something still alive. She flipped further ahead. Several pages had been torn out. The last entry remaining was dated February 13th. Greater than, the lullaby no longer comforts him. He cries when I stop. And when I sing, he cries harder. The walls whisper at night. They tell me the child isn't mine. The next line was written in a trembling hand. Greater than, if anyone finds this, please, forgive me. I didn't want to open that door. Then, at the bottom of the page, written in different ink, as if added later, was a single sentence. Greater than, the cradle is empty. Lan shivered. She looked toward the cradle by the window. It hadn't moved all night. But now, it rocked gently. The blanket rose and fell slightly, as though someone invisible were breathing beneath it. She stepped closer, heart hammering in her chest. Each creak of the floorboard seemed to echo louder than the last. When she reached the cradle, the rocking stopped. The diary slipped from her hand, falling open on the floor. A sudden gust of wind flipped the pages rapidly, then stopped on one blank sheet, where words began to appear on their own. Her eyes widened as letters formed in dark ink, stroke by stroke. Greater than, Lan, help me find my child. She stumbled back, knocking into the table. The candle fell and rolled across the floor, but before the flame could touch the pages, the writing faded, disappearing completely, leaving the paper pristine once again. Lan's breathing was ragged. She stared at the empty page, then at the cradle. The blanket now lay perfectly flat. But from somewhere deep inside the mattress came a soft, rhythmic sound. The unmistakable heartbeat of a sleeping baby. Chapter 8. The Hotel Owner. The next day, sunlight tried to break through the fog but failed. The sky above Hắc Vân Hotel remained the color of ashes. Lan hadn't slept. The words that appeared on the diary's page kept replaying in her mind. Greater than, help me find my child. By noon, she went down to the lobby. The old hotel keeper was gone. In his place stood another man, tall, thin, wearing an old-fashioned vest and a hat that shadowed his face. Lan hesitated. Excuse me, are you the owner? The man turned slowly. His expression was calm, but his eyes were too dark, like glass reflecting nothing. He smiled faintly. Greater than, I was. Once. His voice was steady, almost gentle, but it carried something strange, a hollow echo, as if spoken from a place far away. Greater than, you've met her, haven't you? He said. The woman in the mirror. Lan froze. Greater than, you mean, Lynn? He nodded slowly. Greater than, she was my wife. Lan's pulse quickened. Greater than what happened to her? To the child? The man didn't answer right away. He walked toward the window, looking out into the mist, his back rigid, hands clasped tightly behind him. Greater than, there was a ritual, he said quietly. Long ago, before this hotel was built, this land was once a burial ground. The villagers believed that to calm the spirits, they must offer what was most precious to them. He turned, eyes fixed on her. Greater than, she thought she could save our child by finishing the ritual. Lan's throat went dry. Greater than, save him? From what? Greater than, from me, he said. From what I brought into this place. His smile faded. The air around them seemed to thicken, the sound of wind vanishing entirely. Greater than, I was the one who built this hotel. I wanted to erase what this land had been. But you can't bury what refuses to die. He looked toward the staircase, voice trembling slightly now. Greater than, she warned me. She said something followed us here, something ancient that feeds on names and memories. Lan stepped back. Greater than, and now? Greater than, now it sleeps. Until someone calls her name again. His gaze drifted toward her. Greater than, you spoke her name, didn't you? Lan couldn't answer. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. The man sighed. Greater than, then it's already begun. He walked toward the reception desk, placed his hand on the counter. Lan noticed his fingers left no mark on the dust. When he looked at her again, his features began to blur slightly, like paint dissolving in water. Greater than, when the clock strikes midnight, he whispered. Follow the footsteps. They'll lead you to what she left behind. But remember, not every door is meant to open. The lamp above flickered. When Lan blinked, he was gone. Only the teapot remained on the counter, still warm, steam curling upward. Outside, the fog moved as if alive, circling the hotel in silent spirals. Lan stood there for a long time, feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching her from every shadow. Then, from upstairs, came the soft sound of a lullaby, slow, tired, endlessly repeating. She knew that voice now. It wasn't from any recording. It was real. Lan whispered, Lynn. The moment she spoke, every candle in the hallway flared to life, their flames bending toward her. A sudden rush of cold swept through the lobby, carrying the faint echo of footsteps. Not one pair, but many. And for the first time, Lan realized the hotel wasn't haunted by a single soul. It was filled with those who never left. Chapter 9. The footsteps in the hallway. The hotel fell silent again after the owner's disappearance. Lan stood alone in the lobby, staring at the spot where he had been just moments before. The teapot on the counter was still warm. The steam rose in slow, twisting shapes, like the outline of a human hand reaching upward and fading into nothing. She whispered softly, What have I done? No answer. Only the faint creak of the floorboards above, like someone pacing in a room that had been locked for decades. Lan climbed the stairs. Each step echoed beneath her feet, cop, cop. Slow, steady, heavy with something unseen following her rhythm. Halfway up, she stopped. The sound continued, step by step, matching hers exactly. When she turned around, the corridor behind her was empty. But she could still hear it, one more step after every move she made. Not before, not after. Perfectly in sync, like a shadow that had learned how to walk. Lan reached the second floor. The hallway stretched endlessly, lined with doors that all looked the same. But tonight, the air was different. It shimmered slightly, as though the space itself was breathing. The candle lamps flickered. Somewhere far off, a door creaked open, followed by the faint sound of a woman humming. Lan felt her throat tighten. That lullaby again. She whispered, Lynn, are you there? The humming stopped. Then came a whisper, soft, distant, carried by the air. Greater than, you shouldn't call me, not here. Dash dash dash. Lan took a step forward. The footsteps answered, echoing hers, now heavier, slower. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she walked toward the end of the hall. There was a mirror hanging on the wall, tall, old, its frame carved with intricate flowers now blackened by dust. She saw herself reflected there. But then, as she watched, another figure appeared behind her. A pale woman, hair falling over her face, standing just a few steps away. Lan spun around, nothing. The hallway was empty. She turned back to the mirror. The woman was closer. Dash dash dash. Lan stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The reflection tilted its head slowly. A faint smile appeared on its lips, sorrowful, gentle, terrifying. Greater than, you can hear them now. The voice whispered, though her mouth didn't move. The ones who walked this hall before you. The light flickered violently. Shadows crawled across the walls, stretching like living things. Lan pressed herself against the door of room 11, trembling. All along the hallway, the sound of many footsteps began to rise. Some heavy, some light, some dragging as though the feet no longer belonged to bodies. Cop, cop, cop. They surrounded her from every direction, closing in. Dash dash dash. Lan screamed and ran, but the hallway seemed endless. Every turn led her back to the same row of doors, the same flickering lamps, the same cracked mirror. Her reflection now multiplied, one behind every pane of glass. Each reflection watching her, each wearing a different expression of grief. Finally, she fell to her knees, gasping for breath. The sound of footsteps stopped all at once. Silence. Then, from the far end of the corridor, she saw a faint blue light. It came from room 13. Dash dash dash. The door was slightly open. The lullaby returned, soft and slow, echoing through the hall. Lan's tears mixed with sweat as she forced herself to stand. Every instinct screamed for her to turn and run. But she knew the truth now. No matter how far she went, the footsteps would always follow. She took one step toward the door. The light flickered. The air grew colder. And behind her, 100 invisible feet began walking again. Following her into the dark. Chapter 10. The door that opened. Lan stood in front of room 13. The faint blue light leaking from inside pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, steady, alive. The door creaked slightly in the wind, as though inviting her to enter. She hesitated. Her reflection in the brass door handle looked warped, stretched by the trembling light. Behind her, the corridor was silent again, as if the hotel itself was holding its breath. Lan whispered, "I'm not afraid." But her voice shook. She pushed the door open. Dash dash dash. The air inside was freezing. Dust hung thick in the pale light, turning every breath into a whisper of mist. The room was exactly as before, the cradle by the window, the candle on the table. But something felt different. The candle was lit. Its flame burned perfectly still, untouched by the wind. Lan stepped closer, her boots crunching softly over the old wooden floor. She noticed something carved into the wall above the bed. At first, it looked like scratches, but as she wiped the dust away, she saw words etched deep into the wood. Greater than, do not wake them. Dash dash dash. Her camera beeped. The screen turned on by itself. She hadn't touched it. A new recording began to play, footage she didn't remember taking. In the video, the same room appeared, but brighter, newer, as if filmed decades ago. A woman, Lynn, stood beside the cradle, humming softly. Her hands rocked the baby gently. The camera moved closer, though no one was holding it. Then, the woman looked straight into the lens and said, "Greater than, someone must stay behind." Dash dash dash. The video cut out. The camera screen went black. Lan looked around. The candle flickered for the first time. The air shifted, heavy with a faint smell of burnt incense. From the cradle came a soft sound. A single breath, long and shaky, followed by the creak of wood moving. The blanket lifted slightly, as though something beneath it had turned over. Lan's heart pounded. She reached forward, hands trembling, and pulled the blanket aside. There was nothing. Only the wooden base of the cradle. But carved deep into it, as though by tiny fingernails, were the words, "Greater than, find me." Suddenly, the window burst open. Fog flooded the room, swirling around her like waves of white smoke. Through it, she heard the faint echo of crying, not from a baby, but from many voices overlapping, each one whispering her name. Greater than, Lan, Lan, Lan. The candle went out. In the darkness, the door slammed shut behind her. She ran toward it, pulling hard, but the handle burned cold against her skin. The voices grew louder, surrounding her from all sides. Then one voice, softer, clearer than the rest, spoke near her ear. Greater than, you opened it. The walls began to shake. Every picture frame, every piece of furniture rattled as though something huge was moving underneath the floorboards. Lan stumbled backward, her camera falling to the ground. The lens caught one last image before the screen cracked. A hand reaching out from beneath the cradle, pale and thin, followed by the faint outline of a woman's face whispering through the mist. Greater than, now, stay with us. When the noise stopped, silence returned. The door creaked open slowly, as if by unseen hands. Lan was gone. Only the candle relit itself. Its flame steady once more, casting the shadow of a rocking cradle on the wall. And beside it, another shadow. A woman standing still, watching over what lay within. Chapter 11. The 1WHO returned. Morning came quietly over the mountains. But Hắc Vân Hotel still looked asleep beneath its veil of fog. From the outside, nothing seemed unusual. Only the faint smell of damp pine and incense drifting in the cold air. But when the old hotel keeper opened the front door that day, he found the lobby lamp still burning, and room 13 unlocked. He frowned. That door hadn't been opened in years. At least, not by him. He climbed the stairs slowly, his old knees trembling with each step. When he reached the corridor, a strange silence met him. Not empty, but dense, as though the air itself was listening. The door of room 13 stood ajar, light leaking from within. He hesitated, then pushed it open. The room looked clean, almost peaceful. The cradle sat by the window, unmoving. A camera lay on the floor, lens cracked, covered in a thin layer of dust. And there, beside the cradle, stood a woman. She was facing the window. Her long hair shimmered faintly in the dim light, her white dress untouched by dust. The old man froze. Greater than, Miss Lan? She didn't turn around. Greater than, you shouldn't be here, he said softly. That room doesn't belong to the living. Finally, she spoke, voice low, calm, almost hollow. Greater than, I had to come back. She couldn't rest. The old man's breath trembled. He could see her reflection in the cracked mirror on the wall. But her reflection wasn't moving the same way she did. In the glass, the woman was still standing motionless, while the real Lan turned to face him. Her eyes were pale, distant, like someone who had stared too long into darkness. Greater than, she showed me. Lan whispered. The truth, what happened here? Greater than, you've seen too much. The old man murmured. Now this place has your name. Lan stepped closer to the cradle. Greater than, her child never left. He was taken, hidden beneath the floorboards. The old man's face went pale. Greater than, you mustn't speak of it. Greater than, you knew. Lan said, voice trembling but certain. You helped bury him. He shook his head weakly. Greater than, I only obeyed orders. The owner, he made me do it. Greater than, the owner? Greater than, he's long gone. The old man whispered. But his guilt remains here. It keeps this place alive. Lan knelt beside the cradle. The floor beneath it was slightly raised, just enough for her to notice. She reached down, brushed away the dust, and felt cold wood under her fingers. A loose board, When she pried it open, a rush of cold air escaped from the darkness below. Inside was a small bundle wrapped in cloth, old and crumbling. Lan lifted it gently, her heart pounding. The old man turned away, tears welling in his cloudy eyes. "Greater than, don't," he whispered. "Some things aren't meant to be found." Lan unfolded the cloth. Inside was a tiny bracelet, made of thread and a single blue bead. It shimmered faintly in the half-light. Greater than, he was real, she said softly. He was here. A faint cry echoed through the room, distant, but unmistakable. The cradle began to rock on its own. Lan stood slowly, clutching the bracelet. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of incense. Then a voice, warm and sorrowful, whispered close to her ear. "Greater than, thank you." The candlelight flickered, and for a brief moment, Lan saw two figures in the mirror. A mother holding her child, both smiling faintly before fading into the light. The old man fell to his knees. The silence that followed was not frightening, it was gentle, almost holy. Lan looked at the cradle one last time, then placed the bracelet inside and whispered, "Greater than, rest now." When she turned to leave, the old man looked up at her with shaking hands. "Greater than, if she's gone, who will watch over this place?" Lan paused at the doorway. Her eyes were distant, her voice barely audible. "Greater than, someone must always stay." That night, the lights of Hắc Vân Hotel flickered once more. From the road below, travelers said they saw a woman standing by the window of room 13. Cradling something small in her arms, humming softly to the moonlight. And though her shadow remained, the sound of footsteps in the hallway finally ceased. Chapter 12. The moonlight on the stairs. The moon rose high above the mountains, casting pale light through the mist that never left the valley. That night, Hắc Vân Hotel stood quieter than ever, as if the building itself were listening to its own heartbeat. Lan sat alone in the lobby. The old man had fallen ill after the events of the day. He lay upstairs, whispering in his sleep, muttering words she couldn't understand. The cradle was gone. She had moved it to room 13, placing the bracelet inside. The air there had been peaceful for the first time. But peace in Hắc Vân Hotel never lasted long. The grandfather clock struck 12. Its chime rang through the walls, low and metallic. And with each strike, the temperature seemed to fall a little more. Lan lifted her head. From the staircase leading up to the second floor, she saw a thin stream of moonlight cutting through the fog, spilling over each wooden step like liquid silver. And in that light, faintly, footprints appeared. They glowed for a moment, wet and translucent, as if made by someone walking barefoot from another world. Step by step, they descended the stairs toward her. Lan rose slowly, breath shallow. The sound came next, cop, cop. But not from the floorboards. It echoed inside her chest, as though her own heartbeat had learned to mimic the rhythm. The footprints stopped 3 steps away. Moonlight trembled faintly. Then a shadow stretched across the light. Long, slender, unmistakably human. Lan whispered, "Lin?" The shadow turned its head. And for a moment, she saw 2 silhouettes overlapping. A woman and a child, holding hands. They didn't move. Just stood there, silent, bathed in the pale silver glow. Lan's eyes filled with tears. "Greater than, you found him." The figures remained still, but the air softened, and for the first time since she arrived, the hotel no longer felt heavy. The shadow of the woman lifted her arms slowly, as if waving farewell. Then the light shifted. The moon slipped behind a cloud, and the silhouettes vanished. Only the footprints remained, shining faintly before fading one by one into the dark. Lan sank onto the bottom step, her body trembling with exhaustion. She closed her eyes. The scent of lilies filled the air again. But now it was gentle, not suffocating. In the distance, a door creaked softly. And she heard the old man's voice from upstairs. Weak but calm. Greater than, it's done. She's gone home. Lan looked up. The moon had returned. But the staircase was empty. Still, she could feel the faint warmth where the footprints had been. As if the moon itself had blessed the path of those who finally left. Dash dash dash. She whispered into the quiet. Greater than, rest in peace. And for a fleeting second, she thought she heard a child's laugh. Soft and clear. Rising and fading into the mountain wind. Chapter 13. The final photograph. The morning after the moonlight disappeared. The mountains around Hắc Vân Hotel were clear for the first time in weeks. Sunlight broke through the mist, casting long golden rays across the damp road that led down to the valley. Lan stood by the window of room 13, camera in hand. Her fingers felt heavy as she adjusted the focus for one last picture. The room was empty now. The cradle was gone. The bracelet lay on the table, glinting softly in the sunlight. Everything looked peaceful, too peaceful. She raised the camera to her eye and pressed the shutter. Dash dash dash. Click. The sound echoed gently through the room, like the end of a story whispered into silence. When she checked the photo on the screen, it showed only the empty cradle and the sunlight spilling through the window. But as the image finished loading, a faint shadow appeared behind the light. A woman standing by the window, holding a child. Lan's breath caught. The shadow was transparent, almost beautiful. Their faces turned toward the light instead of her. Dash dash dash. She whispered, "You're free now." At that moment, the clock in the hall chimed once. Soft and distant. Lan lowered the camera. The photo saved automatically. And the screen displayed a new file name, lan_0013.jpg. Her fingers trembled. She hadn't typed anything. She hadn't named the file. She stared at the number. 13. A cold breeze brushed her cheek. Somewhere deep within the walls, she heard the faint sound of a lullaby. Not sorrowful this time, but calm, almost warm. Dash dash dash. Lan packed her things slowly. She took the memory card from the camera and slipped it into her pocket. Before leaving, she placed the bracelet back into the drawer, then bowed slightly toward the room. "Greater than, thank you," she whispered, "for letting me see." When she stepped into the corridor, the air was clear, and sunlight touched every door for the first time. But as she passed the mirror on the wall, her reflection flickered. For just an instant, it showed two women walking side by side, before fading back into one. Dash dash dash. Downstairs, the old man sat by the window, his breathing weak but steady. He smiled faintly when he saw her. "Greater than, you took her picture, didn't you?" Lan nodded. Greater than, it was her wish. He closed his eyes. Greater than, then this place can finally rest. Lan looked toward the staircase, where sunlight now pooled like water. The scent of incense still lingered faintly, but no footsteps followed her anymore. Dash dash dash. She stepped outside. The wind was gentle. Behind her, the hotel stood silent, its windows reflecting the blue of the sky instead of the fog. Lan turned on her camera one last time. She scrolled through the photos. All were empty. No ghosts, no shadows. But the last image glowed faintly, as if touched by light from another world. In it, the woman and her child stood together, smiling in the sunlight, fading slowly until they were nothing more than light itself. Chapter 14. The Mother's Lullaby. After returning to the city, Lan tried to resume her ordinary life. Days passed quietly, people laughed, cars moved, and the noise of the world returned as if nothing had happened. But at night, when the city lights went out and silence filled her small apartment, she began to hear it. A faint melody. The same lullaby that had followed her through every hallway of Hắc Vân Hotel. It came softly at first, like a memory carried by the wind. But each night it grew a little clearer. Dash dash dash. Lan sat by her window, looking out over the glowing streets. The song drifted in from somewhere she couldn't find. Sometimes it came from her reflection in the glass. Sometimes from the floor below. And once, from the camera she had brought back with her. She turned the camera on. The screen flickered to life. The folder labeled LAN_0013 opened by itself. Inside was only one image, the final photograph. Lan stared at it. The woman and her child were still there. But the light had dimmed. Their faces were fading. And behind them, a figure stood in the corner. Watching. She whispered, "It's over. You're free now." But the lullaby didn't stop. It grew softer, sadder. As if someone were singing not to soothe, but to say goodbye. Lan placed her hand against the camera's cold surface. For a moment, she felt warmth beneath her fingertips. The gentle rhythm of a heartbeat. And then she heard a voice, faint and distant, carrying the same melody as the lullaby. Greater than, "Don't be afraid, my child. Rest." Tears filled Lan's eyes. She didn't know if it was her own mother's voice. Or Lin's, or perhaps both. She fell asleep by the window. The camera still glowing beside her. In her dreams, she was back at Hắc Vân Hotel. But the fog was gone. The halls were bathed in golden light. Room 13 stood open. And inside, a woman in white rocked her child gently, singing the same soft tune that had haunted Lan for so long. When the woman turned, she smiled. Not sorrowful this time, but peaceful. "Greater than, thank you," she said. "He sleeps now." Lan reached out a trembling hand. The woman placed the child into her arms. He was warm, light, breathing softly. Lan looked down. And in that moment, the lullaby changed. No longer haunting, but full of love. As she hummed along, the light began to fade. And everything dissolved into a quiet, endless calm. When Lan awoke, morning sunlight filled her apartment. The camera was off. The file, LAN_0013.jpg, was gone. Only a faint scent of lilies lingered in the air. And from somewhere far away, a single line of song echoed one last time. "Greater than, sleep well, my child." Lan closed her eyes. And for the first time since Hắc Vân, she felt peace. Chapter 15. The Night Without Shadows. The days after the lullaby vanished were strangely calm. Lan stopped dreaming of the hotel. The scent of lilies faded. And for a while, she believed everything was truly over. But peace in her life never lasted long. It came to her quietly. The absence, the stillness, the strange feeling that something was missing. One evening, as she sat by her desk, the light in her room flickered. Her shadow on the wall trembled once, then disappeared. Lan blinked. She waved her hand, nothing. The lamp was still on. But the wall behind her showed only empty light. Her heart began to race. She turned off the lamp and lit a candle instead. The flame danced gently, casting soft gold across the room. Still, there was no shadow. "Greater than, it's just the light," she whispered. "It's just the light." But even as she spoke, the air around her grew cold. The candlelight wavered, and from the far side of the room came a faint whisper. "Greater than, you gave it away." Lan froze. The voice was quiet, feminine. A voice she recognized. "Greater than, Lin?" Silence. Then, the flame steadied. The voice came again, softer now, like breath through glass. "Greater than, you gave your shadow to the light. It will keep watch, until it is your turn." Lan looked down. At her feet, faint traces of darkness gathered. Not a shadow, but something thinner, lighter. Like mist trying to remember its form. She knelt and touched it. It was cold as frost. Suddenly, the window burst open. Wind swept through the room, carrying fragments of moonlight across the floor. In that pale light, the mist beneath her feet began to move. stretching and reshaping itself, until it resembled her own silhouette. Lan stumbled backward, watching as her shadow rose slowly from the ground, detached from her completely. It stood there for a moment, its form translucent, its eyes, her eyes, hollow and glowing faintly. "Greater than, who are you?" she whispered. The shadow tilted its head. "Greater than, the one who stayed behind." The candle flickered violently, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room, but it wasn't empty darkness. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Lan reached out into the black, her fingertips brushing against something that felt like air and skin at once. The voice came again, echoing through her chest rather than her ears. "Greater than, you crossed the boundary. Now, someone must stand between the worlds. Greater than, between. Greater than, the living and the forgotten." Lan trembled. She could feel warmth leaving her body, as if something invisible was gently pulling it away. Outside, the city lights flickered, and for a brief moment, every shadow in every window of the building disappeared. Then, one by one, they reappeared, except for hers. Lan sank to her knees, whispering into the darkness, "Greater than, if this is what it takes, then I'll stay." The voice softened, almost like a lullaby. "Greater than, then rest. Keeper of the threshold." When dawn came, neighbors said they saw light shining through Lan's window all night long. A soft, steady glow, as though someone had left a candle burning beside the bed. But when they knocked, no one answered. Inside, the room was calm and empty. The candle on her desk still burned, casting a shadow on the wall. A woman standing still, watching over something unseen. Chapter 16. The Light on the Hill. Weeks passed. The story of Hắc Vân Hotel began to spread quietly through nearby villages again. Travelers spoke of seeing a faint light glowing from the top of the hill. Sometimes blue, sometimes white, always brightest on foggy nights. Some said it was the reflection of the moon. Others swore it was a lantern carried by a ghost. But those who dared to get closer always turned back before reaching the gates. The light, they said, moved. One cold evening, a group of young students came to the valley. They had heard the rumors and wanted to document the story for a university project. Among them was Nam, a photographer, quiet and curious, whose fascination with the supernatural had led him there. The villagers warned them, "Greater than, don't stay after dark. The hill remembers names." Nam only smiled. "Greater than, we just want to take pictures." As dusk fell, the group climbed the winding path. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. When they reached the top, the hotel appeared through the mist. Tall, still, gray. And above it, the light. It wasn't coming from the building. It hovered slightly above the roof, pulsing softly like the flame of a hidden candle. The students stared in awe. "Greater than, it's beautiful," one whispered. "It's like it's calling us." Nam lifted his camera and began to take pictures. But when the first flash went off, the light flickered, then moved. It drifted slowly down the slope toward them, and the air around them grew colder. The pine trees began to sway though there was no wind. Nam lowered his camera. "Greater than, did anyone else see that? Greater than, maybe it's a trick of fog." But the light kept coming closer. And with it came a sound, faint at first, then clearer. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, echoing from the gravel path. Each step seemed to match the rhythm of a heartbeat. Nam's friend Vy swallowed hard. "Greater than, it sounds like someone's walking." "Greater than, there's no one there," another muttered. But Nam already knew that wasn't true. Through his camera lens, he saw it. The silhouette of a woman in white, carrying something small in her arms. The others couldn't see her. Only Nam did. The woman moved slowly, the light following her like a halo. She walked to the gates of the hotel and stopped. For a moment, she turned her head. Not toward him, but toward room 13. Nam's heart pounded. He raised the camera again. The light flared once more. He pressed the shutter. Click. The sound echoed through the valley. And when the flash faded, the woman was gone. Only the hotel remained. Its windows dark. Its shadow stretching down the hill like an open hand. Dash dash dash. Nam looked at the picture. It showed the empty hotel, the fog, the dark trees. But in the corner of the frame, he saw it. A cradle by the window, faintly glowing in blue light. Greater than, it's still there, he whispered. The others didn't understand. They laughed nervously, urging him to leave. But as Nam turned away, he felt something cold brush against his sleeve. A whisper of air, a breath, and a voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Greater than, you saw me. Dash dash dash. That night, long after they had left the hill, the villagers said the light above Hắc Vân flickered 3 times. Then went out. For the first time in years. The mountain was completely dark. But down in the valley, through Nam's camera, the faint blue glow began to appear again, spreading from the screen like a pulse. As if the hill had followed him home. Chapter 17. The Sleeping Curse. A month after their trip to Hắc Vân Hill, the group of students submitted their project. It was a documentary titled, The Forgotten Hotel. They received praise for its haunting beauty, though none of them could explain how the footage had turned out the way it did. The recordings contained moments none of them remembered filming. Slow pans of empty corridors, the cradle rocking by itself, and a figure standing in a window that no one had seen. Nam didn't tell anyone about the photo he'd taken, the one that showed the woman in white. He kept it hidden in a folder on his laptop. But every night, the file name changed. It started as IMG_0013. Then, Lin 13. Then simply, sleep. Dash dash dash. One evening, VY came to visit him. She was pale, her hands cold. Greater than, Nam. Do you hear it? She whispered. Greater than, hear what? Greater than, the footsteps. I hear them outside my room every night. Nam tried to smile. Greater than, it's just your mind playing tricks. But that night, after she left, he heard them too. Faint, slow, coming from the hallway outside his apartment. Cop, cop. The sound of bare feet on tile. Dash dash dash. He opened the door. Nothing. Only darkness and the hum of distant streetlights. Yet when he closed the door again, the sound resumed, this time inside the room. Nam turned slowly. His computer screen had lit up on its own. The photo was open. The woman in the picture had moved closer to the camera. Her face was clearer now. Calm, almost human. But her eyes were hollow. Below the photo, new text had appeared, as though typed by invisible hands. Greater than, the keeper sleeps. The door must stay closed. Dash dash dash. Nam's chest tightened. He reached to unplug the laptop. But the screen refused to turn off. The glow spread across the desk, casting long shadows that didn't match his movements. Then, a voice drifted from the speakers. The same soft lullaby he had heard that night on the hill. It wasn't just sound. It filled the room, thick and cold, like fog pouring from the screen. Nam stepped back. Greater than, who are you? The lullaby paused. Then a whisper answered, directly behind him. Greater than, the one she left behind. Dash dash dash. He spun around. The room was empty, but the temperature had dropped sharply. His breath hung white in the air. The photo on the screen changed again. The woman was gone. In her place stood a man. Tall, thin, wearing an old vest and hat. The owner of Hắc Vân Hotel. Nam stared in horror. The figure's mouth moved, and though no sound came from the speakers, he heard the words clearly inside his head. Greater than, every curse must have a keeper. Dash dash dash. The screen went black. All the lights in the apartment flickered out. Nam reached for his phone. but the screen glowed with the same image. Room 13. The cradle by the window. The blue light returning. From the darkness came the sound of a door creaking open. Then, soft footsteps. Getting closer, slower, deliberate. Nam whispered. Greater than, Lan. But the voice that answered was not hers. Greater than, she's asleep. And now, so will you. The lights came back all at once. The room was empty. The laptop was closed. The lullaby had stopped. Nam stood there, trembling, realizing he had been holding the camera the entire time. He turned it on. There was a new photo in the memory. It showed him, standing by his desk, looking at the screen. And behind him, a woman in white, smiling faintly, her hand resting on his shoulder. Chapter 18. The Last Shutter Sound. Hắc Vân Hotel stood in silence, its walls heavy with dust and years. The moonlight spilled across the cracked floor, turning everything inside to shades of silver and shadow. A month had passed since Nam and his friends had come here. Now, only 4 of them remained. They had returned to the city. But the memory of the hotel followed them. And sometimes, late at night, they could still hear footsteps pacing slowly across their floors. Nam said nothing about the photo he'd found. But one night, he called them all together. They met in an abandoned cafe near the outskirts of town. Lan's story had already become a rumor, a legend told in whispers by students and travelers. Nam placed his camera on the table. Greater than, we need to see what's inside, he said. The others exchanged nervous glances. No one wanted to. But curiosity, and something deeper, a pull they couldn't explain, kept them from saying no. Nam pressed play. The camera's screen flickered to life. The footage showed the lobby of Hắc Vân Hotel, the flickering chandelier, the empty reception desk. Then, the sound began. Cop, cop. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving closer to the camera. Greater than, this wasn't here before. VY whispered. The image shook slightly, as if someone were walking toward the lens. Then the frame froze. For a second, the camera caught something in the corner. A mirror. And in that mirror stood 5 figures. Though only 4 of them were in the room. Greater than, who's the 5th? 2 asked, his voice cracking. Nam's throat tightened. He paused the footage, zoomed in slowly. The 5th figure was a woman, standing behind them, her face half hidden by her long black hair. Her hand rested on Nam's shoulder. The air in the cafe grew colder. The faint scent of lilies filled the space. Greater than, it's just an image, Lin murmured. It's not real. Nam didn't answer. He rewound the footage. But the sound changed. No longer footsteps, but a faint click. The sound of a camera shutter. The others looked at each other in confusion. Greater than, who took that picture? Greater than, no one, Nam said quietly. We were all standing there. Suddenly, the lights in the cafe flickered. The laptop on the counter turned on by itself. The same photo appeared on its screen. 5 people, standing in the lobby. And behind them, the woman in white, smiling faintly. VY gasped. Greater than, Nam. Look at the timestamp. He leaned closer. The photo was dated that very night. Just 5 minutes ago. Greater than, that's impossible. 2 whispered. We haven't been near that place. Nam looked down at his camera. The red recording light was on. He hadn't pressed it. Click. The sound echoed softly. Though no one had touched the camera. They all froze. Outside, the street was empty. The rain had started to fall. Soft and slow, tapping against the windows. Nam slowly turned the camera toward the glass. Through the reflection, he saw movement. A figure standing outside, in the middle of the street. Motionless beneath the rain, the woman lifted her head. Even through the downpour, he could see her eyes. Dark, calm, and endless. She raised a hand. as if to wave. Then the shutter clicked again. Click. Click. Dash dash dash. The cafe lights went out. When they came back on, the screen showed a new image. The same group of friends, sitting at the same table. But in this picture, none of them were looking at the camera. They were all staring to the side. Faces pale, eyes wide, as though something had just appeared behind them. And behind them, through the reflection in the glass, the woman in white was closer than ever, smiling softly at the lens. Chapter 19. The photograph that no one took. After that night, nothing was ever the same. Each of them went their separate ways. But the memory of that photo followed them. Quietly, invisibly, like a shadow that refused to fade. Nam tried to ignore it. He deleted the file, wiped his memory card, and even formatted his camera. But every time he turned it on, the photo returned. Same image. Same woman. Same faint smile. The file name never changed. It was always land13.jpg. Nam stopped sleeping. He heard the sound of footsteps in his apartment. Slow and rhythmic. Circling the bed. At first, he thought it was the neighbors above him. Then one night, the sound came from inside his room. He sat up in the dark. And through the window reflection, he saw a figure standing behind him. The next morning, VY called him. Her voice was trembling. Greater than, Nam. That photo, it's on my phone. Greater than, you must have saved it before. Greater than, no, she whispered. It just appeared. And it's changing. Nam frowned. Greater than, changing how? Greater than, every day. One of his fades. Yesterday, too, was clear. Today, his face is gone. Nam said nothing. When he checked his computer, he saw the same thing. In the image, the group was standing together. But V's figure was already blurring at the edges, like smoke dissolving into air. 3 days later, VY disappeared. Her dorm room was found empty. The window wide open. Her phone on the bed. On the screen, the photo displayed the message. Image updated successfully. Lynn was next. She sent Nam an email, containing only one sentence. Greater than, she's using the photograph to come back. Attached was a version of the picture. But in this one, the woman in white was no longer behind them. She was standing among them, between Nam and Lynn, smiling directly at the lens. That night, Lynn dreamed of a forest of white lilies. In the dream, a woman's voice whispered gently, greater than, don't let them spread me further. When she woke, the email was gone. Tu tried to prove it was a hoax. He analyzed the image using software, searching for digital manipulation. But what he found made him stop speaking for hours. Hidden in the code of the photo was a fragment of text, like metadata, but written by something else. Greater than, I am awake. The next morning, his computer turned on by itself. The wallpaper was no longer his desktop. It was the photograph. And at the center of it, the words shimmered faintly. Say my name. A week later, the image appeared online. No one knew who posted it. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. People wrote comments like, greater than, I heard footsteps after looking at it. My reflection didn't move for a second. There's a smell of incense in my room now. Nam scrolled through the posts, his heart sinking deeper with every one. He realized the curse wasn't staying with them anymore. It was spreading. Every new viewer, every new share, was another door opening. Nam turned off his computer, grabbed his coat, and left his apartment. Outside, the city was silent, as if the world had stopped breathing. He walked until dawn, then returned home, exhausted. When he entered, the apartment was dark. On the wall above his bed, someone had printed the photograph. He hadn't done it. He didn't even own a printer. He stepped closer. The image glowed faintly. And beneath it, new words appeared, drawn in what looked like light. Greater than, you helped me travel farther. Dash dash dash. Nam sank to the floor. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" The air shimmered. The photo on the wall rippled. And from within it came the faint sound of footsteps, growing louder, closer, until they stopped right behind him. Then came the voice, soft, calm, familiar. Greater than, every viewer is a step. Every step brings me closer. The lights went out. When the neighbors came to check the next morning, they found the apartment empty. But the photo remained, taped to the wall. Now there were 5 people in it, smiling quietly. Their eyes turned toward the viewer. At the bottom corner, a faint line of text appeared. Greater than, they have heard the footsteps. Chapter 20. The Chosen One. The end of autumn painted the mountains in fading gold. Mist curled around the hilltops like breath from something ancient still alive. The path to Hắc Vân Hotel was almost hidden now, covered with weeds. Its iron gate rusted and half collapsed. Nam stood before it. His breath came out white in the morning cold. It had been 3 months since the photograph spread across the world. Now, he was the only one left. VY, gone. Lin, gone. Tu, vanished without a trace. And every night, he dreamed of the same thing. A cradle swaying in the dark. And a voice whispering his name through the fog. Dash dash dash. The hotel looked the same as before. Silent, patient, waiting. He pushed open the gate. The hinges cried like a wounded thing. The lobby smelled of dust and incense. Sunlight pierced through broken windows, making the air shimmer with drifting motes. On the wall behind the reception desk hung a cracked mirror. In it, Nam saw not only himself, but another figure standing beside him. A woman in white, smiling faintly. He whispered, "Lan." Her reflection didn't move. But the key to room 13, rusty and heavy, fell from the hook on the wall and landed at his feet. Dash dash dash. Nam picked it up. The metal was freezing to the touch. When he turned toward the stairs, the light around him dimmed. He climbed slowly, each step echoing deeper than the last. At the top, the corridor stretched endlessly into shadow. When he reached the door of room 13, the key turned easily in the lock, as though it had been waiting for him. The room was exactly as he remembered. A single candle on the table, a chair by the window, and the cradle in the corner. This time, the cradle wasn't empty. Dash dash dash. Inside lay the bracelet, the same one Lan had left behind. It glowed faintly in the candlelight. Nam knelt beside it. The air was cold but gentle, like a slow exhale after years of holding breath. "Greater than, I came back," he whispered. "Tell me what you want." The candle flickered. The reflection in the window shifted. And from behind him came a woman's voice. Soft, calm, and full of sorrow. "Greater than, you already know." Nam turned. She stood there, the woman in white, her eyes deep with the weight of centuries. "Greater than, someone must guard the door," she said, "until it closes for good." Dash dash dash. Nam's voice trembled. "Greater than, guard it, from what?" "Greater than, from what still sleeps beneath this place," she answered. "Every soul freed leaves a silence behind. But silence draws the forgotten." He shook his head. "Greater than, then how do I end it?" She smiled faintly, as if the question itself were part of the curse. "Greater than, you can't end it. You can only hold it." Her form began to fade into light. "Greater than, I waited, and you came. Now it's your turn." Dash dash dash. Nam reached for her, but his hand passed through empty air. The candle burned brighter, its flame rising tall, golden, steady. On the wall, his shadow began to split. 2 shapes standing side by side, then merging again. When the light dimmed, only one remained. Nam sat down at the table, took a pen from his pocket, and opened the old hotel ledger. On the first page, He wrote, "Greater than, first night at Hắc Vân. The footsteps have stopped. I hear them still. But they no longer scare me. Morning came softly over the hill. Travelers passing by said they saw light from the windows of the old hotel again. Some claimed they heard a lullaby carried by the wind. Others said it was only the echo of time. At the base of the hill, a note pinned to the gate read, 'Greater than, do not fear the footsteps. The keeper watches while you sleep.' When the villagers looked up again, the hotel windows were dark. Only the faint smell of incense lingered in the cold air, and the mountain seemed to breathe peacefully, as though it, too, had finally fallen asleep. The story is over. Hắc Vân Hotel now lies in ruins, covered in moss and silence. But on misty nights, a faint light can still be seen from room 13, and a soft lullaby drifts through the wind. They say every curse needs someone to stay behind. Lan crossed the boundary first, and Nam, the one who returned, became the final keeper, standing between two worlds. So if one night you hear slow, gentle footsteps outside your window, do not be afraid. It may only be the keeper making his rounds, ensuring that the door never opens again.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.